Hi, my name is Ben Hornok. I'm the representative for House District 42 in Laramie County, the southwest portion of Laramie County.
And I'm Scott Heiner. I'm from the southwest portion of Wyoming, which includes a lot of communities and rural areas in Green River, Rock Springs, Evanston, Kemmer, and Cokeville.
I have a little less to travel, so I'll start off. But I want to talk tonight about Wyoming's spending policy just a little bit. I used this analogy when I was speaking on the House floor. There's an idea that investors have, in my opinion, that money grows on trees, because they say there's a term they always use. There's going to be a reduction in the increase. So what they mean is that every year they're supposed to make X number of percent on top of their base investment amount. So you make 6%, 10%, whatever on top of their base amount. So every year there's supposed to be that 10% growth in your investment. Well, some years there's a decrease in the increase. And so some years you make 5%, which they consider a decrease. So in their mind, every year money's supposed to grow essentially on trees. So I've
heard it called mailbox money. It just magically shows up in the mailbox of the state. and when they open it up, oh boy, there's all this money. Let's spend it.
Yes, and they do that. That's the way they feel with federal dollars as well, and it's very interesting. Federal dollars seems like free money all the time.
Yeah, that's mailbox money, and that's what happened with our American Rescue Plan. As you remember, a couple of years ago during COVID, we got a ton of money that showed up in our mailbox.
Right.
But we had to spend it in a very short amount of time. And so it was dispersed to all these different agencies and told to spend it while the time is good. Spend it all. We have to spend it all. Well, the time is almost over now. Mm-hmm. And so they're trying to gather that excess money up. And there's about $54 million that they found. There may be as much as 80 million in the end.
So they can't find all of it?
Well, it's kind of hard to find all those little coins when they get thrown out there. So now, what do we do with that 54 to 80 million dollars? And that's been quite a debate in our chamber. Right. Do we just give it to the governor and say, here's some money, spend it on something worthwhile? Or do we put some structure to it as a legislature? You know, our constitutional requirement is that we appropriate the money of the state. This is money of the federal government, so that's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But
and that money was supposed to go to helping basically all of the communities. There was a bunch of money that went to individuals and businesses throughout all of Wyoming. So you're talking a statewide problem that we got this money for, to solve a statewide problem.
And it was emergency. Let's solve some emergencies. Let's do some infrastructure, some of these things that were caused by the pandemic. But the way this bill initially came out when we got here a couple of weeks ago, it emphasized putting a lot of that money into mental health programs. So taking this one-time money that we have to spend, and there's no more coming, spend it on a new program for mental health. Let's stand up a pilot program and see how it works.
Create a task force?
No, it's creating a program, so it's going to have continuing costs in the future, but it's one-time money. So we'll have to come up with money after this 2 years when that money's all spent, that ARPA money.
Right.
We will have to fund that program.
Right.
So what we tried to do in the House is to change that so that money that we found would go for infrastructure.
And they prioritized those spending things somewhat.
Yes.
And they said it's infrastructure, but they also prioritized the mental health portion of it, which is very subjective.
So this last biennium, we spent $172 million on mental health. It's a big problem in the state of Wyoming. And we are allocating the resources to help. And in fact, with our budget we're working on right now, that is increasing another 30%. So we're going to be up just shy of $250 million, and that's with a B, $250 million for mental health. So we're trying to address that. But do we take one-time money and create a new program that's going to cost us years going forward? Or do we take that money and help some of our cities and communities that are really struggling to finish some of this water and sewer infrastructure? We have a number of communities that went under boiling order this past year. They didn't know if they could take a shower or not because they couldn't drink the water. And how do you bathe your kids when you have a boil order and make sure that they don't get sick? We have communities that need that money. Do we want to use it for mental health right now where we already are allocating a lot of resources to that? Or do we want to help our communities that are really struggling with infrastructure?
Yeah, I think it generally goes back to the way that Wyoming tries to spend our money or tries to spend the money. We have in Wyoming, we have a fascinating way of gaining revenue. One of the streams is obviously mineral. The other stream, 30% of our revenue comes from our investments. And we have a $28 billion investment for various things, school, retirement accounts, but there's also, constitutionally, there's also the Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund. That trust fund is made up of, right now, over $11 billion. And one of the things that what happens, and they do a great job, your investments every year on that, say that $11 billion, some years they're higher, some years they're lower than other years. So what Wyoming does is they take a 5-year average for their investments, and they take the average of how that fund moved in 5 years. They take the average of that dollar, and they put that into their spending policy, is what it's called. So I brought an amendment that failed in the House, but it actually passed in the Senate. So on concurrence, they're going to have to battle over this. But our spending policy says you can spend, we take that and we spend 5% of the money. Well, my amendment would have dropped that spending policy down to 4%. That means that anything you don't spend goes back into savings to help build up that Permanent Wyoming Mineral Trust Fund.
Boy, they didn't like that, did they?
No, they didn't.
When they have money in their pockets, they like to spend it.
You've noticed?
It makes them look good at home. They have their earmarked projects.
Right.
And I think a lot of the Republicans feel like the more they spend, the better they look.
That doesn't sound very Republican, though, to me.
No, it does not. It does not. It's almost like buying your vote, isn't it?
Especially come this next year when we do have an election year. We're giving state employees big raises. We're increasing their retirement fund.
And who's the biggest employer in the state?
Well, it's probably the state.
It's public employees.
Yeah, over 7,000, and that's just the ones that are on the books. There's a lot that aren't on the books, actually.
Yeah. So if you want to garner votes, let's give them raises right now. And we have given state employees 18% raise over the past 2 years. So we're trying to take care of them. Inflation is tough right now for everyone.
But you can vote for me and Scott, just so you know. And we're not trying to buy your votes. We're trying to fight for you, actually, for everybody in Wyoming, for all the citizens.
It's interesting looking at the budget of the state. It's handled a lot different than you and I handle budgets. We look at our money in our checking account and our savings account. And that's all we have to worry about. If there's not enough money in your checking account, you don't spend it. And here in the state, they've got 700 coffee cans. They have all these accounts. And it's very difficult for anyone to figure out where this money is. $27 billion? You can put a lot of coffee cans out there. And the intent was to make it complicated so legislators didn't know how much money we had.
Right.
And so we couldn't budget very well, and they've done very well with this.
And there's another aspect of that is the tips. So one account makes a bunch of money, and if the account builds up this high, then it tips over into another account, or you have 1/3 of this money going into this account, 1/3 into this account, and then the 2/3 of that amount of money goes into another account.
That's like trying to figure out what your wife is spending while you're spending. She's got her credit cards, and I've got. It gets very complicated, but this is like having 700 credit cards out there.
Yeah, but usually my wife, as soon as I walk out of the store, I get the text message and say, "Hey, what'd you need that for?" Yeah, so
we're trying to do our best here, and I just got to say, Ben is just a rock star. He's only been here a couple of years, but he understands it as well as most legislators that have been here 10 years.
And Scott is the calm, cool, level-headed guy that you can't argue with. Once he says something, you're kind of like, well, yeah, I can't argue that point. So, good job.
Thank you to everyone for the opportunity which we have of serving you. We're doing our best, and we appreciate all of your support.
Thank you.